In a quiet town in Ohio, a young woman named Victoria was going to stay alone for a night because her family was going to the city for the weekend. But tonight would turn into an experience in which he would face the unknown dark secrets of the town. On the first night, Victoria tried to relax in the silence of the house. However, in his dream, he saw traces of a tragedy in the house's past. In her dream, she noticed a figure standing in front of an old mirror in her room. The figure, whispering towards him, directed him to reveal the secrets of the house's past. On the second night, Victoria continued to dream about mysterious events in the house's past. This time, he was guided by paintings lost in an old painting gallery and ghosts of the past. Victoria felt that these ghosts were trying to tell her something. On the third night, Victoria decided to solve the secrets in the house. He explored every corner of the house, studied old family diaries, and began to learn about the history of the town. History showed that the house was once an art gallery, and an artist mysteriously disappeared. On the fourth night, Victoria in her dream shed light on the workshop of the missing artist. The ghost told him that the artist's works were immortal, and that there was a hidden power in these works. To solve this mystery, Victoria examined old paintings and discovered a secret passage. On the fifth night, when Victoria passed through the passage behind the old paintings, she reached a secret room of the house. In the room, he found a power source among the works of the missing artist, Dick. This power was being fed by the life energy of the ghosts in the house's past. On the sixth night, Victoria communicates with the ghost of the missing artist, revealing the source of energy in the house. The artist said that his power in his works is to protect the house, and Victoria can save the house by using this power. On the seventh night, Victoria saved the house using the power of the old artist. The ghosts inside the house have been restored to peace, and the secrets of the town's past have been revealed. Victoria became the hero of the town with her courage and determination. On the eighth night, when his family returned, the house had now become a place where silence and peace prevailed. The townspeople appreciated Victoria's courage and determination to solve the secrets in the house. The house began to be remembered as a symbol not only of the past, but also of victory and rebirth. In a quiet town in California, a young student, Adam, was going to stay alone for one night because his family was going to the city for the weekend. But tonight would turn into an experience in which he would confront the secrets on the quiet town streets and confront the dark past of the house. On the first night, the man tried to relax in silence. In his dream, however, he saw dark figures walking around an old lamp of the house. These figures began to perform strange rituals around the broken lamp, approaching towards it. The man felt in his dream that this event was connected with the history of the house. On the second night, the man saw more images of the house's past in his dream. The ghosts of figures inside an old family photo. They told him an old love story. The man tried to figure out how the broken lamp was connected with this love story. On the third night, the man decided to solve the mystery in the house. He explored every corner of the house, studied old family diaries, and began to learn about the history of the town. History showed that the house was once the home of a couple in love, and as a result of a tragedy, the broken lamp lost its former power. On the fourth night, the man went on a trip to repair the old lamp in his dream. As he wandered around the old places, dark figures began to help him. These figures showed the ways to restore the power hidden inside the broken lamp. On the fifth night, the man began to perform the old rituals to repair the broken lamp. The dark figures guiding him restored the power of the old love story to the lamp. The lamp has been restored to its former glory. On the sixth night, the man restored the ghosts in the house to peace with the power that the lamp had regained. The old love story illuminated the dark secrets around the broken lamp. With his courage and determination, the man revealed the dark past of the house. On the seventh night, when his family returned, the house had now become a place of peace and light. The man left an unforgettable mark on the history of the town. Instead of the dark secrets of the house, it has now begun to be remembered as a symbol of love and rebirth. North of Los Angeles, Emily, a young filmmaker, was going to be alone for a night when her family left town for a weekend vacation. But tonight would turn into an experience where he would encounter a dark presence guided by a forgotten storyboard recorded by an old camera. On the first night, Emily, feeling the silence, decided to disappear into her own world. However, in his dream, he found a camera that had been lost in an abandoned room of an old film studio. The shadowy figure appearing through the camera's lens guided Emily to explore a story from her past. On the second night, Emily watched the old storyboard in her dream. The strip was telling a tragic end of a former filmmaker and a forgotten story that happened in the studio. The shadowy figure said that this story is connected with the shadows pursuing revenge. On the third night, Emily decided to investigate the old movie studio. He searched for traces of the past in the corners of the studio, forgotten sets and dusty rooms. The shadowy figure implied that the revenge at the movie studio was a result of an injustice that once happened. On the fourth night, Emily felt the ghosts of the past in the room where the storyboard was recorded in her dream. These ghosts told the story of how the vengeful shadows were trying to right the wrongs that the filmmaker had suffered. Emily was determined to uncover the story of these shadows. On the fifth night, Emily studied the story of the former filmmaker in depth. The injustices revealed a truth about the events that turned the filmmaker's life upside down. The shadowy figure said that it was Emily's duty to reveal this truth and put an end to the shadow's revenge. On the sixth night, Emily brought the truth to light with the old camera and storyboard from the movie studio. Revenge of the Shadows ended with the correction of the filmmaker's wrongs. The studio was filled with a peace and quiet, free from the ghosts of the past. On the seventh night, when her parents returned, there was an expression of peace on Emily's face. The atmosphere of the city was transformed by the story of a filmmaker who had experienced revenge for the past. Emily's courage and determination had revealed the story of the shadows and made the studio a place of peace. In one of the slums of New Orleans, an ancient century-old manor house was full of urban legends and mysteries. In this house, Michael, a young man, had to stay alone for one night because his family was going to the city for the weekend. Michael was curious about the stories he had heard about the past of this old house. But tonight, he would begin to discover his own story. The first night, Michael tried to sleep in the silence in his bedroom, but a strange beam of light, as if something was flashing, caught his attention. This light inside her room was like the reflection of someone's eyes. Michael, walking slowly around his room, noticed that the eyes disappeared on their own. On the second night, Michael saw in his dream the story of the former owners. In his dream, he saw that the people who once lived in this house were conducting strange rituals and interacting with dark forces. These stories, he was trying to communicate with her. On the third night, Michael decided to solve the mystery in the house. He explored every corner of the house, studied old family albums, and began to learn about the history of the neighborhood. History showed that this neighborhood was filled with an old urban legend, the story of the Eyes of Light. On the fourth night, Michael discovered the origins of this urban legend in his dream. In his dream, he saw that these buildings were actually the headquarters of an ancient demon cult. He learned that the Eyes of Light were the result of a pact with demons. On the fifth night, Michael understood the mystery inside the house and the demands of the Eyes of Light. Her light eyes were asking him to help her fulfill the obligations of the old agreement in the neighborhood. Michael ended this story by making a deal with these old demons and protecting the neighborhood. When Michael's family returned, the house had now become a place dominated by silence and peace. After this experience, Michael began to appreciate the history of the house more and became part of the legend of the neighborhood. In the foothills of the mountains of Colorado, a chalet that had been forgotten for centuries was surrounded by town legends. In this house, Emma, a young woman, had to stay alone for one night because her family was going to the city for the weekend. Emma was determined to solve the mysteries of the chalet. Tonight, however, he was going to embark on a journey towards his own terrible story. The first night, Emma tried to sleep in the silence in the chalet, but in his dream, he heard a strange scream from the depths of the mountain. The scream stuck in his ears and he felt as if it was coming from inside the chalet. Emma, quietly wandering through the corridors, tried to find the source of the scream, but found nothing. On the second night, Emma saw in her dream a dark story about the house's past. In his dream, he saw that this house was once a sacred meeting place of indigenous tribes and was cursed after a tragedy. During the night, the tribal spirits were trying to communicate with him. On the third night, Emma decided to solve the mystery in the house. He explored every corner of the house, studied old family albums, and began to learn about the history of the town. History showed that this house once interacted with supernatural beings and was cursed. On the fourth night, Emma went on a journey to the top of the mountain. There, he communicated with the spirits of an ancient tribe and learned how to break the curse. The spirits of this tribe gave him the task of restoring the balance of nature. On the fifth night, Emma did her best to break the curse in the house. The cursed shriek has disappeared from the chalet forever. Emma returned to her home in the silence of the mountain and in the peace of the spirits of the tribe. When Emma's family returned, the house had now become a place where silence and peace prevailed. After this experience, Emma began to appreciate the depths of nature and the past more and continued to be referred to as a new heroine of the town legend. In a rural part of Kansas City, an abandoned school building was filled with ghost stories and deceptive legends among the townspeople. In this school building, Emily, a young woman, had to stay alone for one night because her family was going to the city for a weekend vacation. Emily was determined to discover the mysteries of this school building, but tonight, he was going to start writing his own story. The first night, Emily tried to sleep in the quiet of the school building, but in his dream he heard strange sounds. Footsteps, whispers, and the sounds of doors slamming gently. It was as if there was something else in the school building. Emily, slowly wandering through the corridors, began to follow the trail of sounds, but each time she could not find anything. On the second night, Emily saw images of the school building's past in her dream. In his dream, he saw that this school was once cursed by a group of young students, and ghosts still roam these corridors. These images that had surrounded his dreams throughout the night, he was trying to communicate with her. On the third night, Emily decided to solve the mystery in the school building. He explored every corner of the house, studied old student albums, and began to learn about the history of the town. History shows that the school once became the biggest curse of the town. On the fourth night, Emily began to solve the curse of the school building in her dream. In his dream, the spirits of the former students were still trapped in the school, and he tried to communicate with them. Emily bravely took action to end the suffering of these souls and solve the curse. On the fifth night, Emily managed to restore the school and its ghosts to peace. The school had now become a place dominated by silence and peace. Emily began to appreciate the history of the school more after this experience, and it would be remembered by the townspeople as an unforgettable story. In one of the shady streets of New Orleans, Grace, a young writer, was going to stay alone for one night because her family was going on a short trip. But tonight would turn into an experience in which he would discover traces of a curse embedded in the city's history. The first night, Grace sat at her writing desk in silence. However, in his dream, he heard the sound of an ancient clock and felt that time itself was reversed. In her dream, one of the old witches of the city approached her, reminding her of a forgotten oath. On the second night, Grace continued to see the story of the old witch in her dream. The witch said that the cycle of time has been broken and the city has been polluted by a secret curse. Grace has made the decision to go on a mission under the guidance of the old witch to solve this curse. On the third night, Grace studied the old city map and began to trace the curse. Wandering through the streets, he found a forgotten fountain in the middle of an old square. An ancient inscription standing next to the fountain showed that the curse was connected with a past love story. On the fourth night, Grace tried to solve the curse by visiting old places in the city. At every step, the ghost of the old witch guided her. Grace began to reveal the love story behind the curse and the forgotten vow. On the fifth night, Grace returned to the fountain to perform the ritual proposed by the old witch. During the ritual, he felt that time had turned back and the influence of the curse had diminished. However, he realized that he needed to take more steps to completely break the curse. On the sixth night, Grace found the door of an ancient mausoleum in order to completely eliminate the curse. When he opened the door, he saw an old love story at the center of the curse. This story, full of love, sacrifice, and forgotten vows, was illuminated by Grace's courage and determination. On the seventh night, when his family returned, the atmosphere in the city had completely changed. Grace's efforts had brought peace and light to the city. The residents of the city approached Grace with gratitude and declared her a hero. Instead of the traces of the forgotten oath, it began to be remembered as a symbol of a new beginning in the city. At the end of a long road, away from the cosmopolitan atmosphere of New York, Jessica, a young woman, was going to stay alone for one night due to her family's weekend trip. But tonight, he would be enveloped by a secret hidden deep in the silent house, and he would bring Jessica face to face with a terrible truth. The first night, Jessica tried to fall asleep, feeling the silence. However, in his dream, he heard the sad cries of a child in an old room of the house. The boy's eyes were filled with a desperation that pierced Jessica's soul. Jessica felt that this dream was not just a dream. On the second night, Jessica opened the door of the old room in her dream. Behind the door, the ghost of a missing child appeared. The boy asked him to help Jessica and save her. Jessica, heeding this mysterious call, decided to find out about the child's past. On the third night, Jessica went on a journey deep into the house. He studied old family albums, researched the history of the missing child, and began to learn about the history of the town. History showed that the house had turned into an old orphanage, and the missing child had mysteriously disappeared. On the fourth night, Jessica sneaked into the old orphanage in her dream. The ghost boy showed him the tragic events he had experienced in the past. Jessica found out that the missing child was abused at the orphanage and somehow died. On the fifth night, Jessica made a deal with the ghost of the missing boy. The ghost boy needed your help to put an end to his past suffering and find peace. Jessica decided to boldly take steps to save the soul of the lost child and restore the ghost to freedom. On the sixth night, Jessica revealed the story of the boy who disappeared deep into the city. The ghost boy's soul was restored to peace after a long silence. The atmosphere inside the house has changed. A quiet tranquility has prevailed instead of the screams of the child. On the seventh night, when her parents returned, Jessica had an expression of peace on her face. The townspeople appreciated his courage and determination to help the ghost of the missing child. The silent scream in the depths of the house had now turned into a song of peace and healing. In a quiet suburb of Chicago, Alex, a young photographer, was going to stay alone for one night because his family was going on a short trip. But tonight would turn into an experience in which he would encounter a dark presence guided by a memory that remained hidden inside the house. The first night, Alex decided to spend in his room, feeling the silence. However, in his dream, he traced a shadow standing in front of an old mirror. The shadowy figure guided Alex to explore a memory from his past. On the second night, Alex studied old photo albums in his dream. The pictures in the albums were telling an old love story and a forgotten time. The shadowy figure said that this memory is about Alex's family and should reveal a truth. On the third night, Alex decided to investigate the past by visiting the old places of the town. He found a forgotten room in the basement of the house and discovered clues to the family's past in this room. The shadowy figure stated that this room contains information about a tragedy that happened in the past. On the fourth night, Alex studied old family diaries in his dream. The diaries revealed a secret in the family's past. The shadowy figure said that this secret is the source of the dark presence inside the house, and in order for this being to gain his freedom, he must reveal the truth. On the fifth night, Alex went after the dark presence inside the house. The entity traced the past behind the old mirror. By following these tracks, Alex discovers that the dark presence inside the house is actually a memory and is waiting for help to regain his freedom. On the sixth night, Alex revealed the truth of the past behind the old mirror. The souvenir represented an injustice in the family's past. Alex has resolutely stepped in to right this injustice and give peace to the memory. On the seventh night, When the family returned, the atmosphere in the house had completely changed. Alex's courage and determination dispelled the shadows in the family's past, and the house turned into a home of peace and healing. The townspeople appreciated Alex for his courage and saw that the memory inside the house was an old mansion in a trendy neighborhood of Chicago was filled with town legends and unforgettable stories. In this mansion, Alex, a young journalist, had to stay alone for one night because his family was going to the city for the weekend. Alex was determined to solve the mysteries in the mansion. Tonight, however, he would embark on a journey towards his own horror-filled story. The first night, Alex tried to sleep in the quiet of the mansion. In his dream, however, he felt as if he had been awakened by the creaking of the door and the sound of steps. He saw the door of his room slightly ajar, but no one was there. Alex, quietly wandering the corridors, tried to trace the old stories in the mansion. On the second night, Alex had a dream in which he saw images of the past in the mansion. In a dream, he saw that a once living family in this mansion had been murdered, and ghosts have been wandering restlessly ever since. During the night, the spirits of this family, who were trying to communicate with the ghosts, were trying to tell him something. On the third night, Alex decided to solve the mystery in the mansion. He explored every corner of the house, studied old family albums, and began to learn about the history of the town. History showed that the murder in this mansion was one of the darkest moments in the history of the town. On the fourth night, Alex discovered in his dream the drama of the ghost family in the mansion. The ghosts guided him to uncover the secrets behind the murder and uncover the truth. When he learned the facts behind the murder, he realized that the truth was darker. On the fifth night, Alex, collaborating with the ghosts in the mansion, was determined to make light of the murder. The ghosts showed him the complexity of the events of the past and the real responsibility behind the murder. Alex did his best to solve the murder and restore the souls of the ghost family to peace. On the sixth night, Alex left the mansion as a place where silence and peace prevailed. The secrets behind the murder were revealed, and the ghost family found eternal peace. After this experience, Alex began to understand the history of the town in more depth and gave a new direction to his journalism career. The mansion now had not only the memories of the past, but also a story of resolution and justice. In a remote town in Massachusetts, a mysterious house stood deep in the forest. This house was decently known among the townspeople as the Witch's House. Emily, a young student, was going to stay alone for one night due to her family's weekend trip. Tonight, however, he would embark on a journey towards his own horror-filled story. The first night, Emily tried to fall asleep in the silence of the house. But in his dream, he heard strange sounds from the walls of the house. These sounds, which sounded like the whispers of witches, were leading him deeper into the house with a strange charm. Emily, wandering silently through the corridors, felt that mysterious forces were beckoning her. On the second night, Emily saw images of the house's past in her dream. He saw that the old witches were holding dark rituals in this house, and a curse appeared. In his dream, the ghosts of witches were asking for help to lift the curse on him. On the third night, Emily decided to solve the mystery in the house. He explored every corner of the house, studied the old witch diaries, and began to learn about the history of the town. History showed that this house was a place where witches were cursed, and this curse was passed down from generation to generation. On the fourth night, Emily met with the ghosts of witches in her dream. Deck. He learned from them that he had to make a courageous effort to have the curse lifted. The ghosts of witches have drawn a roadmap to break the curse by following the traces of an ancient rite. On the fifth night, Emily reached the site of an ancient witch ritual deep inside the house. During the ritual, he was guided by the ghosts of witches and took the necessary steps to lift the curse. When he weakened the power of the curse, the atmosphere inside the house began to change. On the sixth night, Emily managed to completely lift the curse. The ghosts of the witches left the house, thanking and disappearing peacefully. Emily noticed that silence and peace prevailed in the house now. The townspeople praised his courage and determination. The House of Witches is now remembered not only with its dark past, but also as a symbol of victory and freedom. 19. In an old town in Louisiana, the dark shadow of a decadent manor house was surrounded by eerie legends told among the townspeople. In this mansion, James, a young man, had to stay overnight by himself due to the fact that his family was going to the city for the weekend. James was determined to solve the mystery of the manor, but tonight, he was going to step into his own scary story. The first night, James tried to sleep in the quiet of the mansion. However, in his dream, he heard a strange baby crying. He felt as if that voice came from the depths of the manor. James, quietly wandering through the corridors, the baby's voice was gradually increasing, but he could not find any baby. On the second night, James saw images of the mansion's past in his dream. In her dream, she saw that this house was once turned into an orphanage, and the babies who lived here tragically lost their lives. During the night, the ghost babies he had seen in his dreams tried to communicate with him. On the third night, James decided to solve the mystery at the manor. He explored every corner of the house, studied the old orphanage records, and began to learn about the history of the town. History has shown that this house was once the darkest point in the town. On the fourth night, James decided to save the ghost babies from the past of the house in his dream. In his dream, the spirits of the dolls guided him, and he discovered the secret tunnels under the manor. In these tunnels, he met with the ghosts of babies and brought them to peace. On the fifth night, James realized that the manor had now become a place of silence and peace. The souls of the babies had broken the curse of the manor. After this experience, James began to appreciate the manor's past more and continued to be referred to as the hero of the town. Jake, who lives in an old farmhouse in the foothills of the desolate mountains of Montana, had to stay at home alone for one night because his family was going to the city for the weekend. The silence of the house and the quiet mountain scenery around it have always had a charm for Jake. But tonight, the silence and loneliness would turn into a horror story for him that he would not forget. The first night, Jake tried to sleep in the silence in his bedroom, but he began to hear a strange sound. It sounded like it was coming from inside the house. Jake, strolling slowly through the house, tried to discover what the sound was. But each time, he couldn't find the source of the sound. The second night, Jake tried to sleep in the bedroom again, but this time he saw in his dream that the shadows inside the house were coming to life. Shadows were dancing on the walls and filling the room. Jake checked his room as soon as he woke up, but again there was no shadow. On the third night, Jake decided to solve the secret in the house. He explored every corner of the house, studied old family albums, and began to learn the history of the surrounding mountains. History showed that this area was a sacred place for the locals. On the fourth night, Jake tracked down an old indigenous tribe. The tribe worshipped many supernatural beings who lived in these mountains. Jake began to believe that these beings were still roaming this land. On the fifth night, Jake understood the secret of the house and the will of the native beings. The beings wanted to warn that this land is still sacred and what broke this silence. Jake received their message and committed to respectfully protect this land. When Jake's family returned, the house now had silence and a historical meaning. After this experience, Jake began to appreciate the silence of the house and the beauty of the surrounding mountains even more. This was going to be an unforgettable story for Jake. Far from the gloomy forests of North Carolina, in an ordinary neighborhood, Lily, a young woman, had to stay only at home for one night because her family was going to the city for a weekend vacation. The quiet and peace of the house had always been like a dream to Lily, but tonight he did not know that his dreams would turn into nightmares. The first night, Lily tried to sleep in the silence in her bedroom. However, in her dream, she saw that she was trapped in a room filled with a huge mirror. The mirror surface was strangely covered with strange symbols that were reflected in the darkness. He himself, standing in front of the mirror, was looking at her mysteriously. On the second night, as soon as Lily woke up, she felt the silence of the house even more deeply. He felt that something strange was going on in the silence that was circulating around the room. The silence, as if it was seeping into the house. Lily, while walking around the house during the night, noticed a strange smell in the kitchen. On the third night, Lily decided to solve the mystery in the house. He explored every corner of the house, studied old family albums, and began to learn about the history of the neighborhood. History showed that this neighborhood was full of mysterious events. On the fourth night, Lily discovered the story of the house in her dream. In his dream, he saw that the house had once been the city's hospital, but terrible experiments were being carried out in the hospital, and the screams of patients still echoed in the rooms. On the fifth night, it was time for Lily to run away from home. He understood that the darkness inside the house was combined with painful memories of the past. Lily discovered that it was the sign of a spirit trapped inside the house. He bravely took action to solve the terrible secret inside the house and set the soul free. At the end of the story, when Lily's family returned, the house had now become a place where silence and peace prevailed. But the ghosts of the past still roamed there, and Lily had learned to make peace with the silence of the house after this experience. Sarah, who lives in an old lakeside cabin in the middle of Florida's desolate Everglades swamps, had to stay at home alone for one night because her family was going to the city for the weekend. The silence of the house and the view of the swamp had always been a source of peace for Sarah. But tonight, this silence would turn into a nightmare for him. The first night, Sarah tried to sleep in the silence in her bedroom, but he saw something strange in his dream. Far from the house, he heard a distant echo, as well as shadows wandering in the swamp. The echoes made him feel the silence inside the house even deeper. On the second night, Sarah began to see the past of the house in her dream. The sad stories of the previous owners of the house he was trying to communicate with her. The echoes in the house carried traces of the past. On the third night, Sarah decided to solve the secret in the house. He explored every corner of the house, studied old family albums, and began to learn about the legends of the swamp people. Legends were talking about supernatural beings who lived in the swamp. On the fourth night, Sarah went on a journey deep into the swamp. There, he followed the tracks of mysterious beings and reached the places where the swamp people lived. He began to believe that these beings were still on this land. On the fifth night, Sarah felt that she was getting closer to solving the mystery of the swamp people. He learned that these beings are part of the swamp people's past, and they are trying to help them. Sarah decided to deal with these beings and understood their message. When Sarah's family returned, silence and peace reigned in the house. Sarah learned to make more peace with the swamp silence and mystery after this experience. This story had an unforgettable meaning for Sarah and helped her discover the true beauty of silence in the house. John, who lives in an isolated cabin in a deserted mountain village in Montana, had the opportunity to stay at home alone for a weekend because his family was going on a short trip. Home was a place where silence and loneliness reigned in the middle of the mountains, and for John, this silence felt like a dream. But this weekend, he would discover that deep secrets were hidden in this silence. The first night, John tried to sleep in his bedroom in the silence of the cabin. However, when he woke up, he noticed that strange sounds were coming from inside the house. These sounds were different from the hum of the wind. It sounded as if something was talking inside the house. On the second night, John again had a strange experience. In his dreams, the shadows inside the house seemed to come to life. Shadows appeared in the corners of the room, then quietly disappeared. In his dreams, he felt that these shadows were trying to tell something. On the third night, John decided to solve the secret in the house. He explored every corner of the house, studied old family albums, and learned the history of the village. In the history of the village, it was written that this area was sacred to the locals, and this hut was inhabited by a healer in the past. On the fourth night, John revealed the truth behind the mysterious events in the house. The shadows represented the spirits of the natives, and they wanted to help him. As a result of a tragedy in this land, the spirits of these shadows still roamed this hut. John was able to restore these souls to peace. On the fifth night, your cabin was now full of peace. The shadows and figures were quietly moving on with their lives, and John rediscovered the silence and sacred meaning in the house. This silence was a new beginning for him, and your cabin had found its true meaning for him now. Sarah, who lives in an old farmhouse among the glamorous forests of North Carolina, had to spend a weekend only at home because her family decamped to the city for a short vacation. The quiet of the house and the tranquility of its surroundings have always been like a dream for Sarah. But this weekend, he had no idea that his dreams would turn into nightmares. The first night, Sarah tried to sleep in her bedroom, but felt a lack in the silence that hit her ears. Normally, the rustling of the forest surrounding him and the sound of raindrops on the roof would calm him down. But tonight, he could not hear those sounds. It was as if the village and the house had fallen into silence. On the second night, Sarah tried to sleep in her bedroom again, but this time she had a strange dream. In his dream, countless black birds appeared blurry in the garden of his house. These birds were covered with feathers and were quietly flying around the house. Sarah noticed in her dream that the birds were not singing when they were looking towards her. They were just looking silently. On the third night, as soon as Sarah woke up, she noticed strange shadows walking around the house. These shadows were like silence itself. Sarah dreamlessly felt the shadows fill her room and begin to disappear, as if in silence. On the fourth night, Sarah decided to solve the secret in the house. He explored every corner of the house, studied old family albums, and learned the history of the village. He learned that a silent disaster had occurred in the history of the village. This silence still had an effect on the residents of the village. On the fifth night, Sarah understood the silence and sadness. He accepted the silence. He accepted the silence with a sadness and understanding. Now silence was like a peaceful friend for him. When Sarah's parents returned home, she expected to share this experience with them. Alex, who lives in a historic mansion in one of the slums of New Orleans, had to stay at home alone for one night because his family was going to the city for the weekend. The old wooden floors and mysterious atmosphere of the house have always had a charm for Alex. But tonight, he was going to discover a terrible secret hiding in the house. The first night, Alex tried to sleep in the silence in the bedroom. But when he woke up in the middle of the night, he noticed that a strange yellow light was shining around the room. The light illuminated the dancing shadows in every corner of the room. Alex decided to discover the source of the light. On the second night, Alex heard strange noises in his room. It was as if whispers were coming from under the old floors. He felt that these voices were trying to tell the history of the house. The very next day, he came across an old family album and started studying the history of the city. On the third night, Alex felt that he was getting closer to solving the secret of light and shadows. He discovered the existence of a secret tunnel under his room and started following this tunnel. The tunnel extended into the underground world of the neighborhood. On the fourth night, Alex reached an old underground cave at the end of the tunnel. The cave had been used as the ancient place of worship of the local people. Alex set out to solve the mystery of this cave. On the fifth night, Alex encountered strange beings inside the cave. These beings represented the spirits of the ancient natives. Alex took on a mission to help them and managed to restore these souls to peace. When his parents returned home, Alex told them about his experience. The silence of the house was now a source of peace, and the mystery had been solved. This story had remained full of the history and mystery of the house, and now it had a special meaning for Alex's family as well.
Living in an old cabin in the deep forests of North Carolina, Emily loved silence and nature. One evening, however, the silence of the night was terribly disturbed. The first night, Emily was spending time in the cabin reading a book, but suddenly he saw a strange shadow outside the window. The shadow passed by quickly and distracted his attention. He could not see anything outside, and in the silence he could only hear his own breathing. On the second night, as he was lying in bed, he began to hear strange noises from inside the hut. Footsteps, light crackling of the door, and rustling of curtains echoed inside the hut. When he went to his room, however, all was quiet. His dreams were also strange and disturbing. On the third night, Emily found an old diary. The diary was giving information about the lives of the previous owners of the cottage. Emily decided to reveal the strange secrets of those who lived here in the past. On the fourth night, Emily followed the diary's clues and reached a secret cellar under the hut. In the cellar, he found an old spell book and strange symbols. The book was to help explain the secrets of the hut. On the fifth night, Emily decided to try the spells in the old book. However, these spells released strange beings who lived in the hut. The beings followed Emily and left strange symbols and writings inside the hut. Eventually, Emily managed to unravel the secrets of the former owners and imprison the strange beings back in the cellar. But this terrible experience in the hut would stay with him. The quiet forests of North Carolina had now turned into a new beginning for him. But the terrible evenings he lived in the cabin remained a memory that he would never forget. Fleeing to an old cabin by the Hudson River to escape the crowds of New York City, Sarah began to enjoy the quiet and isolated life. However, this silence soon began to change. The first evening, Sarah was spending a quiet evening in the cabin, but later in the night, he began to hear strange noises coming from outside. At first, he thought these were caused by the wind, but the sounds continued to increase. On the second evening, Sarah noticed that the sounds were also inside the cabin. He could hear strange whispers and footsteps from inside the closets. When he entered his room, however, all was quiet. Anxiously, he tried to sleep. On the third evening, Sarah tracked down a strange presence in her room. A figure in the shadows, it quickly disappeared. Her fear increased, but she decided to follow the figure. On the fourth evening, Sarah found a secret passage in the basement of the hut. The passage was connected to an old tunnel, and strange sounds were coming from the tunnel. Sarah was determined to explore the tunnel. On the fifth evening, Sarah discovered an ancient underground cave at the end of the tunnel. The cave was filled with strange symbols and writings. While trying to decipher the meaning of the symbols, he discovered a strange ritual. Finally, Sarah completed the ritual and revealed the secrets of the cave. But the revelation of these secrets has freed the strange beings who live in the cave. The two of them went back to the hut, but strange beings followed them. Sarah decided not to live alone in this quiet cottage anymore. The silence of the Hudson River turned into a new beginning for him. But the terrible evenings he lived in the cabin remained a memory that he will never forget. The silence of a deserted mansion outside Los Angeles was a source of peace and loneliness for Emily. After a tired day at work, he had returned home, eaten dinner, and started to enjoy the silence. But the silence was the beginning of a nightmare for him. On the first evening, Emily was spending a quiet evening in her room. But slowly, he felt a slight chill through the house. He felt that something was happening outside the window or behind the door. However, he checked his room. There was nothing. Nevertheless, fear was gnawing at his insides. On the second evening, before going to sleep, Emily heard a strange noise. The clicks and whispers that followed the wall made him curious. Maybe they were normal sounds caused by the fact that the house is old. When he awoke, the silence of the house was undisturbed, but still he could not sleep comfortably. On the third evening, Emily had fallen asleep in her room. In his dream, he saw a strange figure walking around inside the house. The figure was approaching him, but when he looked in all directions, the figure was disappearing. When he woke up, there was silence in his room, but he was determined to control everything now. On the fourth evening, Emily discovered a secret passage. It was hidden behind a bookcase. The passage led to an old cellar. Emily began to go downstairs curiously. The cellar was dark and deserted, but as he proceeded, he began to hear strange sounds. On the fifth evening, Emily found strange symbols engraved on the walls in the cellar. While trying to decipher the meaning of these symbols, he encountered a strange being deep in the cellar. The being was trying to tell him a dark secret, but this secret would reveal a terrible truth. Finally, Emily managed to unravel the secrets of the strange presence and silence inside the house. But the revelation of these secrets caused the release of the terrible presence inside the house. The two of them tried to leave the house, but the dark presence followed them. Emily has decided not to live in this quiet house anymore. The history of the house and the secrets of his soul were still with him, but this terrible experience had taught him a great lesson. The noise of Los Angeles turned into a new beginning for him, but the terrible hours he lived at home remained a memory that he will never forget. Sarah, a young woman living in Los Angeles, decided to study a legacy from the past. His grandfather had told his family that he had found a key to a very old house and that he needed to solve the mystery of this house. This old house was once mysteriously abandoned outside the city. Nancy decided to go to the glamorous mountains of Montana for a long-term vacation. The cabin he rented was in a quiet and isolated place deep in the forest. He wanted to spend time peacefully and enjoy nature. But his first night began with a fear that he will not forget. As the sun was setting, the atmosphere of the cabin seemed to be trapped. But at night, he began to feel strange things in the air. Later in the night, he began to hear strange noises inside the cabin. He went from one of the rooms to another and tried to figure out the source of the sounds, but could not find anything. When he went to dream, he felt that something was wrong. He felt as if the doors had been closed, as if he himself had been trapped inside. He quickly went back to his bed and checked the door. The door lock seemed to lock itself. In a panic, he tried to open the door, but it wouldn't open. At that moment, a strange shadow began to move inside the house. Shadows were moving about the walls, as if something had come to life. Suddenly, he saw a black figure slowly appearing from inside the room. This figure was dressed in a long black robe, and his face was covered. The woman screamed and thought about escaping through the window, but there was no light outside. The figure approached and lifted the cover of his black cassock. There was no face in it, just a dark void. The figure quietly approached him and extended a hand. The woman pushed the figure with her hand and tried to run away, but the figure caught her. A groan rose from within him. The figure entered her body and took over her consciousness. Now he was seeing the world through the figure's eyes. During the night, he wandered with the eyes of this figure and wanted to see the world outside. However, he seemed to be trapped inside the figure. When morning came, the figure left her body and the woman returned to her own consciousness. But after that night, he could never relax alone in the cabin. He could not unravel the secret of the black figure and the locks of the cabin. This mystery lived with him and followed him for the rest of his life. Sarah, a young woman living in Los Angeles, decided to study a legacy from the past. His grandfather had told his family that he had found a key to a very old house and that he needed to solve the mystery of this house. This old house was once mysteriously abandoned outside the city. Sarah decided to spend the night in this old house in order to solve this mystery. The house was in disrepair and worn out, as it had been abandoned for many years. This, however, caused him to wonder even more about the mystery. When night fell, he entered the house slowly. With a small lantern, he began to explore the mysterious corridors of the house. He could hear strange sounds in every corner. Footsteps, light breaths, and strange whispers. However, whenever he returned, no one was there. Sarah found a mirror in an old room. The mirror was covered with dust for years, and its image was darkened. But he started to see things. A shadow-like figure appeared in the mirror. The figure was looking straight at him. As he quickly turned away from the mirror, the figure also appeared in the room. She started to run away in fear and went to other rooms, but the figure was following her everywhere. Sarah tried to figure out who this mysterious figure was. She was showing me a picture from her mother's old diaries. In the picture, there was a group of people next to someone who looked like the figure in the mirror. He understood that this figure belonged to this family. The figure in the mirror approached him and held out his hand. Sarah, as she held the figure's hand, suddenly began to see past the house. What happened at home, family secrets, and a dark past were emerging. Sarah realized that the figure in the mirror was actually a reflection of the house's past. That figure seemed to be a kind of ghost that guarded the secrets of the house and its past. Sarah decided to solve the family secrets and cooperated with the figure inside the mirror, revealing the secrets of the house's past. But the revelation of these secrets caused more and more strange events at home. While fighting the mysteries in the house during the night, Sarah's determination and courage ensured that the secrets of the family and the secrets of the house were revealed. Finally, the mystery of the house was solved, and family secrets were revealed. Sarah had a moment when the figure in the mirror thanked her and left the house. However, he never forgot that night, because it was a night when he bravely stepped in to discover both family secrets and the house's past. Emily decided to escape the chaos of New York City and live in an old and quiet stone house. He had bought a plot of land, and deconstructing this house had become a passion for him. But the silence of one night caused her peace of mind to turn into hell. That dark night, a violent storm began. The howling of the wind and the pounding of the rain on the house woke Emily from her sleep. His dreams were made impossible by the lightning light entering through the bedroom windows, making it impossible for him to dream. He wanted to turn on the room lights, but noticed that the lamp socket next to the lights was not plugged in. This made Emily uneasy. He slowly got up from his bed and looked at an old mirror in the opposite corner of an empty bedroom. The mirror was covered with cracks and stains for many years. But tonight, the mirror showed the reflection of something. Instead of seeing her own face frozen, Emily saw a dark presence behind her. The being was looking at him and approaching him with a subtle smile. He retreated in terror and tried to quickly close and lock the door of the room, but the door lock was useless. He decided to leave the room quickly and went down the stairs. But the end of the stairs did not come and seemed endless. In a panic, she decided to turn around and go to the bedroom. However, when he returned to the bedroom, the mirror was still showing the reflection of that dark presence, and this time the presence was even closer. It was as if that being was about to come out of the mirror. Emily let out one last scream and smashed the mirror, neutralizing the presence from the mirror. When he did, everything in the house returned to normal. The mirror had been shattered and darkened, but the being had vanished. Emily could never sleep alone in that house after that night, and she had to leave her old stone house. The memory of that dark night, however, was always with him and recalled him fearfully. Sarah, who lives in a rural village in Michigan, was left alone after her family went to the city for the holidays. The silence in the village was like an escape full of calm and peace for him. But the silence held a terrible secret. The first night, Sarah was having a quiet evening, but after a while, he began to hear strange sounds from outside. These events, which started with oddities, progressed into the house. Clicks and footsteps began to surround the house. On the second night, Sarah saw the shadows of strange figures on the walls in her room. The figures were rapidly disappearing and reappearing. When he entered his room, however, silence had returned. His dreams were also scary and complicated. On the third night, Sarah decided to investigate strange noises inside the house. He found a passage, and the passage led to an old cellar. There were walls in the cellar full of strange symbols. He tried to decipher the meaning of the symbols. On the fourth night, deep in the cellar, Sarah found an old diary. The diary was giving information about the lives and strange rituals of the previous owners of the house. Sarah wanted to solve the secrets of the past. On the fifth night, Sarah followed the clues of the diary and performed the old rituals. But these rituals released strange beings who lived in the house. The beings followed him and left strange symbols inside the house. Eventually, Sarah managed to unravel the secrets of the former owners and imprison the strange beings back in the cellar. But this terrible experience at home would stay with him. The quiet village of Michigan had now turned into a new beginning for him, but the terrible evenings he lived at home remained a memory that he would never forget. Emily, who lived in a remote town in Kansas, was leading a quiet life. One night, however, he noticed that the silence had been terribly broken. The first night, Emily was having a quiet evening, but slowly he began to hear strange noises inside the house. Clicks and whispers filled the room. When he went to his room, however, all was quiet. On the second night, Emily began to have strange dreams. In his dreams, strange figures were following him, and he was trying to escape from something. When he woke up, he heard those strange sounds again. This time, however, the sounds were coming from outside her room. On the third night, Emily, her dreams were even more complicated. Scary figures were chasing him in his dreams, and he was trying to escape from something. When he woke up and jumped out of bed, he noticed that there was a strange light source inside the house. When he went towards the light, he encountered a terrible sight. The room was covered with strange symbols, and the light source was in the middle of these symbols. There was a presence here, an invisible force that seemed to have taken over the interior of the house. At that moment, the shadow of a figure appeared and quickly approached. Emily ran out of the room and ran outside the house, but outside, too, silence reigned. The neighbors' lights were not on. The street was quiet. In a panic, he ran towards the town for a while, but the terrible silence brought him back to the house. When he turned into the house, the figure was still there, but now it was closer. Emily understood that that figure was a being that lived in the darkness. The figure was trying to remind him of a secret from the past, but this secret would reveal a terrible truth. Finally, Emily bravely faced the figure and learned the dark secrets of the past. The dark being who lived inside the house served as a protector who protected those secrets. However, Emily decided to reveal these secrets and came to an agreement with the dark entity. When the secrets of the house were revealed, the silence was broken and the dark presence left the house. Emily agreed to live alone in this quiet house now, but the silence had become a peaceful silence, no longer terrible. The past of the house was with him now, but this time it was full of peace. I was excited to return to my old home again after many years. The exterior of the house was the same, but inside it was now filled with silence. I had planned to spend the night here by myself. The history and silence of the house have always attracted me. When I entered the house, my first task was to remove from its cover an old mirror that stood in the middle of the room. The mirror was accompanied by a note telling the story of the family who lived here many years ago. The note claimed that the family had experienced many tragedies and that the house was under some kind of curse. I studied my reflected image in the mirror, but after a while a strange shadow appeared on the surface of the mirror. The shadow seemed to be calling me and began to dance on the surface of the mirror. The shadow seemed to fascinate me. The shadow pulled me towards him, and suddenly, I walked into the mirror. It was like I wasn't at home anymore. I was in another dimension. There were strange symbols everywhere. They seemed to be engraved on the walls. The figure standing in the corner of the room was inviting me to learn the meaning of these symbols. As I began to decipher the meaning of the symbols, I began to understand the true origin of the curse. The previous owners of the house had practiced strange rituals and spells. The family story also included strange beings living inside the house. The revelation of the symbols released strange beings. The mysterious shadow in the house seemed to be the master of these beings. But I didn't want to stay in this world too long for them. Using the symbols, I managed to trap the strange beings back into the house. The shadows came back and they pushed me into the mirror. Suddenly, I was at home and the silence had returned. From that moment on, I lived alone in this quiet house every night. The silence and the history of the house were still with me, but there were no longer ghosts of strange beings. The mysteries and silence inside the house continued to live with me, like parts of a charmed world. Restoration project that we had completed, I was preparing to spend the first night in my old but magnificent mansion, famous for its wooden floors and ceiling decorations. Your house was abandoned as a result of a fire many years ago, but now I wanted to bring life to it. His silence made her feel like a rare treasure in the northern seaside town outside the town. I was going to be on my own at work, and I was looking forward to being alone with this silence. The first night, after having dinner at home, I studied historical documents. I could hear the wind howling outside and the windows flapping. The silence was a beautiful experience, but my dreams were filled with nightmares haunted by burning human figures. The second night, I slept under the great hall in the ceiling of the house. My dreams again filled me with terror. The figures I saw now seemed like the ghosts of those who had lived in the house's past. When I woke up, I couldn't find any symptoms. On the third night, I noticed that something was strange in my room. The fading of his skin on the shelves of the bookcase seemed to have mysteriously reversed. One of the shelves started to shake, and suddenly it looked like it had fallen out. But there was no wind. On the fourth night, I became more immersed in historical documents before going to bed. I discovered that the house had once been a mental hospital, and that most of the patients treated here had died. The reason for my dreams at home was clear, but I still couldn't find a logical explanation. On the fifth night, I felt human figures approaching me in my dreams. I woke up with my eyes and saw a figure in the corner of my room. She was like a transparent being, but her eyes resembled my last look before my death. Finally, I realized that the figure was trying to make a communication. He nodded slightly and disappeared decently among the historical documents. I examined the document and found a diary page there, on which was written the name of the figure. There was a story of a person in the diary, which was written with the name of the figure. He wrote that he pretended to lose himself and lost his soul as a result of the tortures in the mental hospital. Finally, the figure's message was, "Can you break the curse inside the house?" And then he quietly disappeared. At this moment, silence suddenly reigned in the room. There was silence and peace inside the house once again. There were no ghosts of anyone anymore, but the silence of the house and the bitter memories of its history were still with me. During my university years, I used to stay alone in my grandmother's old mansion to spend the summer holidays. The ceiling decorations and antique items of this old mansion were the scene of unforgettable memories of my childhood, but every time the dark hours approached, I could not help the stories of the historical ghosts of the mansion from circulating in my mind. One summer evening, I was at one of the times when my grandmother left me to be alone in the mansion. In addition to cooking well, my grandmother, who also likes to collect antiques, had filled this house with all kinds of mysterious items and historical documents. Every time I would enjoy searching for hidden corridors and forgotten rooms inside the mansion. But tonight was different. When I entered, I felt a strangeness in the atmosphere of the mansion. There was a silence in the house that I had never experienced before. Usually, at these times, the clatter of my grandmother's washing machine or the barking of her dog would ring in my ears. But tonight, there was no sound at all. After eating dinner, I began to review the historical documents of the mansion. My grandmother's memories and family history were in a closet filled with pages and pages of documents. However, an antique candlestick that fell on one page attracted my attention, a strange symbol that appeared on another page. The symbol was also repeated in the ceiling decorations of the house and in the engravings on the door entrance. This mysterious symbol aroused a certain something in him at that moment, and in an instant, I found myself moving towards a closed room in the corner. When I opened the door, I felt a light wind coming in. The room was empty. There was only one candlestick, and the candles of that candlestick were burning. I took the candlestick in my hand and suddenly shone a light on a historical painting on the wall. In the picture, there was a portrait of a woman who was the first owner of the mansion. The woman's eyes seemed to be watching me. Suddenly, I found myself in the middle of a strange feeling all over the house. Silence surrounded me, and my eyes scratched in every corner of the mansion. The portrait indeed seemed to be moving. The woman took her steps through the painting and picked up the candlestick. "You released me. Thank you," he said, and went back to the corner of the room. Suddenly, a strange beam of light appeared in the room, and the woman disappeared into the picture. The sounds returned. The barking of the dog and the clattering of the washing machine began to be heard again. After that moment, I continued to live every night in my grandmother's decrepit mansion among historical ghosts and silence. The mysteries and ghosts inside this mansion continue to live with me like parts of a charmed world. Sarah, who lives in a quiet beach town in Florida, was left alone after her family went to the city for the holidays. The silence of the house and the rustle of the sea seemed to him a way of peace and relaxation. But this silence was hiding a terrible secret. The first night, Sarah was having a quiet evening. But slowly, he began to hear a strange sound breaking the silence of the night. At first, he thought it was caused by the wind, but the sounds continued to increase. On the second night, while sleeping in bed, he encountered a strange being. The room was lit up with a strange light, and a shadow appeared in the corner of the room. The shadow quickly approached and then disappeared. Sarah woke up in a fright. On the third night, Sarah decided to investigate strange noises inside the house. He found a passage, and the passage was leading to an old basement. The basement was full of old objects and strange symbols. He tried to decipher the meaning of the symbols. On the fourth night, Sarah found an old diary in the basement. The diary was giving information about the lives and strange rituals of the previous owners of the house. Sarah wanted to solve the secrets of the past. On the fifth night, Sarah followed the clues of the diary and performed the old rituals inside the house. But these rituals released strange beings who lived in the house. The beings followed him and left strange symbols inside the house. Eventually, Sarah managed to unravel the secrets of the former owners and imprisoned the strange beings back in the cellar. But this terrible experience at home would stay with him. The quiet coastal town of Florida had now turned into a new beginning for him, but the terrible evenings he lived at home remained a memory that he would never forget.